So the Gandrodha is actually a reference back to a previous sutra. Which sutra did we first encounter that word? Nirodha. The second, yeah, Patanjali's famous definition of yoga. Cessation. So how do we achieve the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind? So first and foremost, we need abhyasa. What is abhyasa? Practice. Probably that's something you've noticed about yoga is that it only works when you practice. Have you noticed? That's why Guruji said, 99% practice, 1% theory. But when we practice, according to Patanjali, we have to practice with a certain kind of attitude or lack of attitude or mindset or lack of mindset, which he calls vairagyam, meaning, Eddie talked about this the other day a little bit, I think, meaning non-attachment. So this is difficult to practice without attachment to the result or to who we think we are or where we think we're going, right? Because normally when we practice something, why do we practice? To get better, right? Is that why we're practicing yoga? To get better? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of a paradox of sorts. Like you're practicing music, of course. I mean, eventually, when you get to Carnegie Hall, right? So you got to practice and practice and practice. You get really good. So one day, you can play Carnegie Hall. Or if you're a yoga practitioner, you want to keep practicing and practicing and practicing until you get as good as Richard. Because then once he passes on, you can take his place. So, what was that? So, Patanjali's not saying, don't put forth effort in your practice. He's not saying don't be attentive. He's not saying don't give it 100%. He's just saying basically do your best and let it go. Because, once we're attached to the fruit of our practice, what happens? You say, okay, I know I have really stiff hips, but I'm getting close, really close to sitting in Padmasana. And sometimes when I'm really warm, when I've done the whole primary series, at the very end, when it comes time for Padmasana, I feel like I'm right on the verge of getting in there. So, maybe it was this morning in that room with 200 people when it was like a sauna in there. We were so inspired by having all of those wonderful teachers in there. You were all heated up. You were all sort of whipped up into some kind of endorphin frenzy. So at the very end, you say, okay, today's the day. You get to Padmasana, and you got one leg in, say, okay, here I go. And you take that other leg, and you whip it in there. And all of a sudden, you hear your knee making all sorts of popping and tearing sounds. But there you are suddenly in Padmasana. You've done it. But, at what cost? This is just kind of a stupid illustration of things that happen when we become attached to certain goals, certain results, certain fruits of the practice. So this is very much related to the practice of parigraha. So basically, the life of the yogi is considered to be a life of simplicity. Nowadays in the West, they have these transformational workshops that tell you, you know, you can have it all. You know, you can be hip and beautiful and rich. You can have it all. But, you know, the question is, do we really want it all? The second part of the discussion, of course, we're going to talk about the niyamas, one of which is santosha, or contentment. So I'll save talking about contentment because someone else is going to talk about that.
Maybe. We're running out of time.
But, okay. What? Want me to wrap it up?
No, we have a few more minutes.
Okay, when the watch stops. So, you know, basically, the things we get attached to in life almost always are things that exist within the realm that's called Prakriti, the realm of nature, the realm of the phenomenal world, the observable world. And the nature of things in this world is that they're constantly in this process of change. And yet we get attached to things as if they're not going to change. So what happens when we attach ourselves to something and then it changes? What happens to us? Oh, some suffering. Yes. What was it the Buddha said about suffering? What is the root of all suffering? Attachment. Right. So, you know, even the physical body, I mean, this is a great example of something we get very attached to, the physical body. But obviously, at some point, we're going to have to let it go. You know, Guruji used to say, well, body is just a rented house. Do your practice, at the end, you get back your cleaning deposit. Well, you know, that's not it. You don't get to take it with you when you go. So, you know, one of the most important things that yoga is trying to teach us is not to be so attached. And, you know, human beings seem to have a remarkable knack for attachment. Have you noticed that the mind is very sticky? The body is very sticky. You know, they're like glue. Things just attach themselves to us. So, in a sense, a large part of the yogic process is learning the art of letting go. And when we can truly let go and let God, as they say, or allow the power of grace to enter our lives, then what Patanjali says is that then we begin to recognize the true purpose of why we're here. So, anyway, I'll see the rest of my time.
We only have about 40 minutes left.
Okay, we can be quick.
So if you can allow the niyamas or I don't know how you want to do it. Let's do that.
So let's keep going. Round and roll.
How about a little round for a minute? And we'll finish with the long part.
Shaucha. Now we're moving on to the niyamas. Yamas are the restraints that we have towards our interaction with the world outside of us, the observable universe, and the niyamas are the relationships that we form with our internal world. So, some people ask, well, why do you have to, why don't you start with, yourself first and figure all that stuff out and then deal with the universe after, and people around you? And one of the answers to that is because sometimes we need to understand how to work with outer boundaries and limitations before we understand how to work with ourselves and our inner worlds. So anyway, let that be. We're moving on to Shaucha, which is cleanliness. When Carol sent around an email, she sent it to all of us and said, what yama and niyama do you want to talk about? And I wrote back and said, well, it surprised me. Actually, first I wrote back and said something really esoteric that I wanted to do, and then she was like, well, you can choose one. I said, okay, it surprised me. So she wrote back and said, okay, you got Asteya and Shaucha. And I was like, what? Got through the short stick, come on. And then David was like, I got brahmacharya, and then I didn't feel so bad anymore. I didn't hear him talk about sex at all.
Only the absence of.
Yeah. No, brahmacharya. So, anyway, then I was actually thinking today, sort of after class, and I went back to the room and I took a shower because I thought, well, if I don't know anything about Shaucha, I'll just be an example of it on stage. And I remember, that one time, Guruji complimented me. It was like one time only. And basically, if you're dealing with like a real master, they're never ever going to give you a compliment or give you a seal of approval or, do anything. They're not supposed to, because then you're going to think that you're something special. Like going around all the time saying, oh yeah, that's really good, or perfect, or that's great, or you did that really well, that's wrong, I shouldn't be doing that. If I really was trying to train you guys, I would never, ever, ever compliment or give any encouragement to any of my students. So, anyway, it's kind of a joke, guys. You're all beautiful, and sexy, and slim, and beautiful. Say two, at least four. So, one time he complimented me. There was this Indian guy who'd come over, and I don't remember who it was or what relationship we had. We'd been doing all this pujas or Sanskrit or something together. And this guy was like complimenting me to Guruji, saying, oh, he knows Sanskrit so well, and blah, 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 and this, that, the other. And Guruji was sitting there, and when the guy was done, Guruji said, yeah, Eddie is a very clean man. That's it. So I was thinking that today, and I thought, okay, so yeah, good. It's fitting that I got Shaucha, because apparently it was the only thing I was ever good at. So, according to the Yoga Sutras, the verse on Shaucha is Shauchat Swanga Jigupsa Praya Asamsaragama. When you become established or perfected in Shaucha, you will gain an abhorrence for your body and the bodies of others. That's what it says. I mean, really. Show of hands. Yes, exactly. I mean, I just wanted to smell good after taking a shower. And now I find I'm supposed to be developing an abhorrence and a repugnance for my body and the bodies of others. So, exactly, I should do the second one. The second shower. The second sutra. So, what are the two types of cleanliness? One is external cleanliness, where you bathe and you use soap. Ricky, tell me when I'm in 4 minutes, okay? And thank you. And regular external cleanliness. These are all the things, all the hygienic things that we know about. I'm not going to go into detail. The second thing is mental cleanliness, where we, I'm just going to read you what Vyasa said, because he says it better than I did. I wrote it down. Maybe I didn't write it down. Anyway, mental cleanliness is refers to the 6 poisons, and I know I wrote it down. It's simple. Internal cleanliness is the removal of the impurities of the mind. That's all I said. That's simple. So, what are the impurities of the mind? They are desire, anger, greed, delusion, pride, and envy. These are all the poisons of the mind. They're called the dirt of the mind, which can cause obstacles and cause us to think in, as Hariharananda says, in perverse type of thinking. We want to be removing this perverse type of thinking causes basically mala or dirt within our field of consciousness. So, I'm out of time. Sorry. I'm just going to tell you the last verse. The Sattva Shuddhi Somanasya. Thank you. 4 straws. Just going to hold these right here. Got one per minute. And 50 yen. Thank you. So what happens when you have purification of the internal purification of the mind? You have, from internal cleanliness, you get purification of the mind, pleasantness of feeling, one-pointedness, subjugation of the senses, and the ability for self-realization. So, the external cleanliness positions you in one way, the internal cleanliness positions you basically for internal feelings of gladness, internal feelings of purity, internal feelings of one-pointedness of mind. And one-pointedness of mind is necessary for moving towards samadhi and towards the other limbs. Okay, so that's how he thinks. Cleanliness, external, internal, feeling of gladness, feeling of one-pointedness, moving towards self-realization. So, take a shower, wash your yoga mat, and we're all good. 5 minutes, right? Oh, really? Oh man, I'm speeding through that. I want to talk about something that Nancy said, which was absolutely fantastic. Going back to menstruation. This is a very profound thing. In the Hindu tradition, every day the gentlemen have to do purification rituals. They have to do achmaniya, which is if you swear at the puja on Thursday night, where you put a spoon of water in your hand, you say Keshavaya Swaha, Narayanaya Swaha, Madhavaya Swaha, and then on your whole body you place the different forms of Vishnu, who is the pure and the all-pervasive. You do all these rituals, and the men have to do them every day, because every day after you finish doing them, you become impure again when you have contact with the world after you leave your meditation cushion and you finish your Gayatri sadhana. So men have to do these purification rituals every day because they have no way otherwise of becoming internally pure. Women, and this is not something I made up, this is according to the tradition, once a month internally become clean. They don't have to do any of these rituals to maintain their inner purity. That's why women are better than men. Always been.
You got 10. 10. 6. 6. Okay, we're going to come back at 3 and maybe we'll go later. Here we go. All right. Santosha, happiness, peacefulness. In your mind, if you were to conjure the symbol of the peaceful person, would it be this person? Eyes never fully open or closed. A half smile on my face. Head is never quite straight. And when I speak, there's a little bit of a hush to my voice. because I'm very peaceful. Okay, that could be the peaceful person. Won't take it away from that person. However, have you ever heard the Dalai Lama speak? He knows something about peacefulness, I figure. He is animated. Sometimes he's yelling, sometimes he's all laughing, he's crying, he's like, wow. Full on. So, what is peacefulness? Santosha, happiness. Yeah. At first it's just, well, things will make me happy, I'll just pour things over my senses. I'll taste things, I'll listen to things, I'll touch things, whatever, right? We want to see things. This will make me happy. We already found out, that the senses, they're really never satisfied. At times you can slide food over it all day long and it just, okay, next, right? Maybe some more. There's a point where we have to take control of that, yeah? So, will the senses make us happy? Well, maybe it's our body. That happiness can be achieved through our body. Can real happiness? What is temporal happiness and what is lasting? The core of it, beneath it all, that transcends the temporal nature of pleasure or pain. I'm going to apologize for a bad attempt at Sanskrit, but Bhagavad Gita says something like this: Dehino sminyata dehe komanam yavaram jaraptastahan praspatyadhirasmidran muyati. In this life, from childhood to youth to old age, we are constantly changing bodies. The time of death is another change of body, and the self-realized soul is not bewildered by this change. Cool. What does that mean? When I was born, I weighed 7 pounds, 11 ounces. My parents said, he's kind of cute, we'll call him David. So David starts to grow up, and then he's 7 years old, and I go, whoa, my name's David, I gotta do my sister, check it out. And I turn 14, I go, hi, my name's David, until I'm 14. And I go, hi, my name's David. So why am I jumping every 7 years? Every cell in our body has changed in 7 years. Yeah, I'm now 55, right? So that's a bunch of bodies. So who's David? Already almost 8 bodies. I lived on 77, 11 bodies. So who is this person I keep introducing and saying, I'm David, or I'm happy? But that person is, their body's changed so many times in this life already. There's been so many me's. But which one of those is happy or sad? So what's beneath that? I know I'm a collection of my thoughts and my experiences, and that's what will make me happy, is having pleasant thoughts. And memories, good memories. Just erase all the bad ones, just remember all the good stuff in life. That'll make me happy. In the year 2000, my father passed away. He had Alzheimer's and other physical complications. At any rate, if you're familiar with Alzheimer's, the memory goes, right? It's horrible to watch. As in yoga we like to say, be in the moment. That's a kind of a hell, because it means there is no past. There's nothing else. And you can't remember, all of a sudden, like, who are these people up there on this table with me? Like, what's that about? And you forget things. You make little notes, and you hide, you lose things, but you think people stole them, so you get freaked out and paranoid. So my father would sit there. He didn't recognize his wife, been married for 50 years. Didn't recognize me. He was a brilliant man, a scholar. He read the dictionary for fun. He would interview me. He had a legal pad and a pen. He'd say, so have we met before? And tell me a little bit about yourself and your case. And I look, he's not even writing words. He's scribbling on a piece of paper like this. It's a muscle memory. I hear his voice. I see his body in front of me. But who was that? Who was speaking to me? Who are we? Who is David? Who is this person who's continually changing? I'm seeking happiness and all of these things, but they're temporal. So then what happened? That didn't make me happy. I'm happy. I got to get this and this and this. So in that verse, it says that when we die, which is eventually going to happen, I don't know very many 200-year-old people, right? So eventually, it's over. But if you're really understanding, you won't be bummed out by that. So let's say I'm a deer, and I'm in the forest, and I'm eating grass in the early morning, and it's morning dew, and it's cool, and the sun is dappled sunlight coming through the canopy of the forest, and the sweet taste of the grass in my mouth, and I hear birds tweeting. Everything's fine. But unbeknownst to me is a tigress over there in the forest like this, slowly creeping closer and closer. suddenly burst forth from the forest. I turn, and there's the tiger. I see jaws wide open, claws like this. It pounces on me, drags me to the ground, kills me, and eats me. What tigers do. So that deer, one moment, everything is great. I'm enjoying life. I am happy. Next second, I'm not happy anymore. This day has suddenly turned out really bad. This is not the way I thought it was going to go. Now, the tigress then, she goes back in the forest and she has some babies waiting for her. She walks up there and the babies see their mother walking. She still has blood on her face, and as she approaches them, what is their emotion? What is their mood? Ooh, mommy's coming, yay. They're not frightened or anything. She wants to move her babies from there to there. How does she do it? The same jaws. She picks them up, just like a house cat. And what does the little kitten do? Well, baby tiger just surrenders like that. Total surrender. You watch the baby being carried by the mother there, totally like, God, I hope she doesn't kill me. They're completely surrendered, and she carries them from here, and she places them gently and lovingly over there. In this story, what do the jaws of the tiger represent? Death. Okay? So, death. If my only pleasure and my only identity and my only bliss in this life comes from my body and my ability to do an asana or my good head of hair or the things I've accumulated or my status in society or the money I've got or whatever it is, if that's all I know about myself, death is going to be misery. It's going to be fearful, anxiety, filled with stress, and I'm going to be ripped out of this body. However, if I'm fortunate enough to understand that everything in this life has a temporal nature, that my true identity transcends the temporal nature of this body, this vehicle, that my true identity is a spiritual spark which lives on beyond this, and that in the next phase, okay, it depends, are you going to heaven or, oh boy, I got to wrap it up. That was my 9 minutes or something. But so if my only identity, my only pleasure, and my only sense of self is wrapped around all of these things that the toys I've accumulated in this life to kind of give myself some pleasure, then ultimately I'm going to be really bummed out because it's all stripped away from us. I saw a cartoon once of a hearse on the way to the cemetery pulling a U-Haul trailer, and I decided, I said, yes, I can. But we really can't. The pharaohs tried it. They tried to take all that stuff with them. So, where is happiness? What is it going to come from, right? We can get temporary distraction and some temporary pleasure from stuff. But lasting pleasure, true santosha, true bliss, can only come when we identify with the real nature of our soul. And it shouldn't be a bummer like, wow, that's a drag, I mean, we're all dying. But the temporal nature of life should not diminish the inherent value. It just means, wow, we shouldn't waste a moment in time. We don't know how long we've got. Is it another day, another minute, another 10 years, another 20 years, another 50 years? True happiness comes to that lucky soul that aligns themselves with their true purpose in this life. And you know, the people we're talking about, you see them, wow, that's what they should be doing. And they feel happy, they're blissful. That's like the Dalai Lama in that moment. But it doesn't even have to be that. It might be the parent raising their kids, the person who knows this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And so true happiness does not come from doing whatever we want to do. Rather, true happiness comes from doing whatever we ought to do.
Ashtanga Yoga.
Let me hear a hallelujah.
So the next topic is tapas, which means self-discipline. Learning to control the senses, learning to control our desires. And there are a lot of different techniques for it, of course. One of the men that I have studied with a lot uses one technique that's called Mala. Baba Haridas has given up speaking. He hasn't spoken since he was 20 or 21 years old. He's now just turned 88. the dry erase board. It used to be a chalkboard. I'm waiting for the iPad. There's that around his neck and write an answer to you. He said it's to avoid arguments, to conserve energy. So what is the purpose of doing these things? With all of the things that we've been talking about, you have to realize that it's not easy to control desire, and we all know that. And so how do we remind ourselves what makes it so that you can remember to stop before you speak harm, before you do something that you might regret? And there are these techniques in yoga, one of them being is a thing like Mala, where you stop speaking for a while. A lot of yogis used to go to caves when you're doing some intense practice like Ashtanga. It kind of magnifies some of the negativity for a while, yeah? So it's almost like you get worse before you get better in some ways. And this is, I think, pretty normal. So again, the idea of not beating yourself up because you see a lot of anger come up. A lot of anger comes up with all of us when we practice second series, when we were first learning. This is physiological. The liver is going to create a certain situation. So what do we do to control that negative thought? What we can do is get away from other people. Yeah? So this was, I think, one of the reasons yogis went in caves. I go to my room when I know that I'm in that space where I'm just kind of out of control and I'm not able to control my mouth. I just go away from people. That's my way of self-discipline. Because as I grew up, and I was a pretty aggressive kid, and I found that I would just say things, not meaning to hurt, but they hurt me. And for me, one of the times that I really learned that my mouth was out of control and saw it so clearly was Ahmad's first visit to the United States. I had not bought myself toe rings, and I was covered in hers. I just loved her toe rings. I saw them, I wish I had bought toe rings when I was there. And I kept thinking it and thinking it. She had just come, she was going to be in the States for, I think it was like 4 months. So I knew if I said to her, oh, I love your toe rings, I wish I had bought some, she would take them off and give them to me. And that's what happened. I tried not to say it. I didn't want to say it. I kept sitting there and don't say it, and I blah. She reaches down, she takes them off, she puts them on. I was pretty ashamed of myself, actually. I couldn't believe I would do that. I felt I had caused harm, and I really saw how much my mouth was out of control and running ahead of my mind and my personal desire. Of course, now I wear her toe rings. It's a very blessing. I've had them on since the day she gave them to me. So now that she's passed, of course, it is even more meaningful to me. And they remind me constantly. I look down, I see those toe rings, to watch what I say, to be a little more present, a little more careful. And if I find that I'm losing that ability, I go off by myself. Because it isn't worth it anymore to kind of go away, as I used to do. So, we've all been talking a lot of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not a scholar. I love listening to these gentlemen who read Sanskrit and understand it, and it's way beyond what I feel I want or can do. But I like hearing it. My favorite translation of Bhagavad Gita is by Gandhi. Kind of an odd person to write about a war story. Yeah. He's the man of nonviolence. What he talks about, first he says that the reason he's writing it is because he too knew no Sanskrit. He was an uneducated man. And he wrote the commentary of the Bhagavad Gita for the common person, for those of us that don't know Sanskrit and who will read this and be clueless of the inner meanings and the hidden truths in it. It appears to be a story of war. It appears that there's the question of action or non-action, the duality of the two. And what he points out is that when we're talking about tapas, when we're talking about self-discipline, it doesn't mean no action is taken. We're not supposed to be inactive. We are actually supposed to be when we talk about these things, it doesn't mean we don't do. And the idea is to be away from the fruit zone, so you're not attached to the footstays behind the head today, or whether you even feel happy at the end of your practice. Sometimes that might not be happening either. Sometimes you might feel kind of sick or upset after, in the sense that we're cleansing. These are quite dynamic practices. Some days we have to sleep all day, and the plans we had set up are gone. Like last night, I really had hoped to go to MC Yoga, but I was exhausted, and I had to lay down. I had to take care of the self instead of doing something. So when we take on a self-discipline, to self-discipline ourselves, we're taking an action. And I feel like our Ashtanga practice is the first step of it. So every day we've committed to taking a practice, whether, as I was saying the other day, it might just be 3 Surya Namaskar and 3 finishing. At least you've done that practice. Something very magical happens when you step on the mat and you do that every day. You don't actually need a mat. You can step on any surface. You don't have to carry the mat around, and you still can do yoga. So that, I think, is for most of us, if we're coming into this as Western mind and never having experienced yoga and don't know a thing about sutras or any of these things, what first starts us to become self-disciplined is taking on that commitment. I'm going to do this daily, whether it means maybe I can't go to dinner with my friends, maybe I can't go in the morning. I practice at night, so that's why I use that as an example of not going to dinner. Very often people want me to go out, but I practice between 6 and 8, and that works for me in my life. So that's when I'm practicing. So I've given up my limited social world for the practice. And from that self-discipline of the days I don't want to do it, and I know none of these people ever have those days. They're all ready every day. For me, there are sometimes when I'd rather be doing something else, or I'm too tired. And then put down that mat and I get on it, and it's always within, maybe it takes maybe 2 Surya Namaskars for me to realize that the resistance I was having to practice was because of my energy wasn't moving freely, or I was feeling fear of practice. Maybe yesterday it was much harder, and I felt some pains, and I didn't feel I wanted to go on today. Maybe I needed a break. But always, as I get into the practice, it moves the energy, and I almost always go through the entire practice. Rarely do I stop at the Surya Namaskars that I told myself it's okay to do. So the self-discipline, whether it's of the mind, the body, all of it starts really with our daily practice. And until someone commits to that daily practice, I don't think they're going to find the benefits, true benefits of the practice. Because really, the true benefits are not only the health-giving things that yoga is. I think Eddie was talking about lineage. And the older I get, the more I realize and understand the importance of lineage, the protection, that little prayer that we say at the beginning, calling in help for us to be self-disciplined. There are others that have gone before us who have told us so that when we stray, they'll say, it's okay, next time maybe you're going to do a little better. But not to judge when you fall off the wagon or when you're on it. It's all just part of life. And the lineage is extremely important to call it in. That's what we're doing when we say that prayer, calling. And now Guruji has passed. He's one of those that we're calling to and saying, help, please come and help me. And I find it so wonderful, and it really brings about a lot of the other things such as we're talking about. It brings about a lot of content and a lot of happiness, and a feeling that there's more to myself. It takes me out of the small self into the big self, and self-discipline becomes easier and easier over time. It doesn't necessarily mean retreat from the world, but it does mean to not again, like all of them, it just keeps unfolding, and I don't know if there's an end to any of it. You keep having to work on yourself a little bit more, a little bit of time takes to do these things.
It's 1 o'clock.
It's okay.
So what I was thinking is we could bump the last two to this afternoon's session rather than trying to rush through them now. Not because I'm at all attached to what I have to say. I'm really curious as to what Richard has to say. So, that's it.